The iPhone 14 event has just finished. I've got loads of notes. I'm going to do a very different video where I just waffle on and give you my opinion. So let's get into it. That was quite an aggressive intro, wasn't it? I didn't mean to be aggressive, sorry. But yeah, it's going to be a slightly different video for a couple of reasons. The first one is to do with my slightly yellow eye, if you can see that. I've not been punched in the face. I've got an eye issue, which is being sorted by the hospital at the moment, and the yellow stuff are eye drops. R is eye drops. So don't worry about me, that's fine. But because of that, I need to get some rest, basically. So I haven't got time to do a really in-depth, lots of editing type video. The second reason is because I think, having done quite a few of these reaction type videos to Apple events, I think off the cuff opinions are far more interesting, particularly when it happens straight after the event, because bit of inside baseball, when these events take place, there's a bit of a rush by YouTubers like myself to get content out because we want to be picked up by the algorithm and get views and all that business. I'm going to talk about it, give you my opinions on the things that mattered, on the things that didn't matter, and hopefully provide you with some real valuable content. Let's get into it. I think, leading up to this event, I think the Apple Watch seemed to have the more interesting rumours. I think the iPhone 14, which we'll come on to in a moment, I think that had kind of dried up rumour-wise. Whereas the Apple Watch, rather, had really picked up pace. And there was this whole thing about the Apple Watch Pro. That didn't happen. And again, I'll get onto that in a moment. The first thing we had was the Apple Watch Series 8. And the very first thing I kind of noted down was the lackluster intro. It was just a very quick graphic of the Apple Watch 8 coming into view, and that was it. We were straight back to Jeff talking about it. It's basically the Apple Watch Series 7. They talk about it being swim-proof, dust-proof, crack-resistant, basically all of the stuff that this Series 7 does. There is one new thing, which is the temperature sensor. And that basically, as you would guess, takes the temperature from your arm. Now this can do a number of things, but the main thing they're angling it towards is women's health. And this is where I probably have to bow out because I am not qualified at all to talk about this. But basically they are using this temperature sensor to help women track their menstrual cycles. Now I can't go any further with this one, I'm afraid, because I don't know the topic at all. But Apple are clever. They know that this feature, even though it's based on best estimates and retrospect, I think they used the phrase retrospective estimates. That is the exact phrase they used. They know, this is where Apple is so smart. They know that will make headlines, and that will probably sell a shed load of Apple Watch Series 8s. So well done. The other new feature is car crash detection, which is equally interesting and, as you would guess, uses various sensors and GPS and all that sort of stuff to detect when you're in a bad accident. And when you are, it automatically contacts your SOS contact, rings the emergency services, does all the things that you possibly can't do yourself. Again, very good stuff. I like this. There's also a low power mode, which gets you up to 36 hours of battery life by turning off some various things in watchOS. And at that point, I was thinking, okay, fair enough. The Watch Series 8 has clearly got a better battery. Well, no, because that feature goes right back to the Series 4 and upwards. So clearly it's just a watchOS thing. We needed something brand new. And that's where the Apple Watch Ultra came in, which was a surprise for me and probably for other people who were expecting this Apple Watch Pro. It's not that, it's going to be an Ultra. This blew my mind for several reasons. Mainly because I am so far from the person this watch is aimed at. For instance, I never thought I'd watch an Apple event where they start referring to the Apple Watch as a dive computer. But that's exactly what they did. This Apple Watch is built for explorers, and that really is backed up in a lot of the specs. So the case is made from aerospace grade titanium. It's a 49mm watch with the brightest, biggest display of an Apple Watch ever. It goes up to 2000 nits of brightness, which is bonkers. It's also got a brand new action button which can be customized and which comes in high contrast international orange. I have no idea what that means, but it's obviously something to do with, hiking and SOS stuff. They all come with cellular as well, and the battery has 36 hours of life as standard. Now, this is where I think it comes a little bit unstuck, and Apple talked about the fact they'd been liaising with, ultra runners and hiking professionals and all this sort of stuff. I just refuse to believe that those people would be happy with the 36-hour battery life. In my mind, those people go for Garmin's, or probably even more specialist watches that will last for days and days and days, weeks in some cases. I still think 36 hours, and okay, you can get apparently 60 hours out of it when you turn some stuff off. Even that, it doesn't sound like enough if you are doing these really extreme expeditions. The Apple Watch Ultra also comes with their most technical watch face yet, which is called the Wayfinder, and that can be customized for mountains, trails, all that sort of stuff. And it has this very cool looking night mode, which turns red and kind of turns off all the non-important stuff on the screen. I like that. The bands are quite interesting. It's got an alpine loop, it's got an ocean band, and it's got a trail loop. Now I was trying to make notes about what these bands were made out of. I got as far as the titanium loop, and that was it. I completely ran out of fingers to keep up with what they were talking about. It all sounded very impressive. These aren't your standard Apple Watch bands. It's also got dual frequency GPS, which includes L1 and L5. I have no idea what that is, but L5 clearly sounds better than L1. And I think what this means is that in built-up areas, you get a better GPS signal. If you've ever been in a big city and you've tried to use GPS on your watch or on your phone, you'll probably know that it's not very accurate. Apparently, the GPS stuff in the Apple Watch Ultra is much better. And then there was this long segment about diving, and I'll be honest, I completely switched off at that point. They were going so far literally off-piste at this stage that I was just thinking, this watch ain't designed for you, Mark. You're not that person. I'll probably never go scuba diving. I like hiking, but I wouldn't call the hiking that I do extreme. I like running, but my running is doing 5K around the block. This watch isn't for me. So obviously I've ordered one, and it's coming on the 23rd of September. Next up, we had AirPods Pro and the latest generation of Apple's earbuds. I won't spend too long on this because it wasn't very exciting. There's a new H2 chip which gives better audio apparently, although they didn't talk about lossless. They didn't talk about any kind of high fidelity new codec which people have assumed Apple are working on. Clearly that's not ready yet if that's what they're doing. They spent more time talking about the better spatial audio. You can now have personalized spatial audio by using your iPhone's true depth camera to get a personalized listening experience based on your ears. Noise cancellation is apparently 2 times better. Don't know how that works. Transparency mode is also better thanks to an adaptive transparency mode which can calculate at 48,000 times per second. There's a new touch control which adds a capacitive sensitive layer to the stem of the AirPod Pro where you can use your finger to go up and down and all that sort of stuff. There's longer battery life which gives you up to 6 hours of listening time, which is a 33% increase. And with the case you get 30 hours, which is a 6-hour increase. And the case also has a speaker in it now, which is actually quite interesting. You can use that to locate the case if you've lost it, and you can also use it to work out if the case is charging. If there's low battery, it also makes a noise when you start charging. There's also a new lanyard loop, which they didn't mention the price of, but which you can imagine will be one of those stupidly priced Apple accessories. And that's it. You can get the AirPods Pro 2 on September the 9th, and they will be $249. I'll get a pair because my current AirPods Pro are pretty much dead, and I think Apple knows this. I think they've waited this long to bring out the new AirPods Pro because they know that most people's current AirPods Pro are basically dying and will need a new pair. Hence, they will sell loads of these. Right, very quickly on the iPhone 14, the standard one, it's basically the iPhone 13 Pro, I think. Less one camera, and they've added a bigger version. So they've got rid, I'm afraid, they've got rid of the iPhone mini. That has gone. That's very, very sad. And for some reason, they've put a massive version in place. So you've now got a 6.1 inch iPhone 14, which is what that size has always been, and a 6.7 inch iPhone 14 Plus. The mini is dead. And I'm not going to talk much about this at all really, because It's just scraping the bottom of the barrel, I think, now. We've reached peak smartphone. In fact, we reached it 2 or 3 years ago, I think. I personally believe the iPhone 12 is where they hit their high mark with it. And the iPhone 14 kind of proves that. That new bigger model will satisfy people who don't want to go for the Pro Max, that want to spend less than that but have that big screen. And if you're needing a new iPhone and you've been waiting and waiting and waiting for one, you cannot go wrong with this iPhone 14. It will be a fantastic phone. It will be quick. It'll have a fantastic camera. It's got a great screen. The battery will be good. Yeah, it's a great phone. It's just incredibly boring. However, the iPhone 14 Pro is interesting for one thing in particular. And I'll quickly skip over the stuff that is kind of interesting, but isn't as interesting as the big interesting thing, which is A16 Bionic, new chip, great. It's basically got 16 billion transistors, 4nm process. It's 50% more memory bandwidth for its GPU than the outgoing version, the A15. It's great. It's going to be very, very quick. The camera has 48 megapixels now. There's a new 24mm focal length. Cinematic mode does now go up to 4K, which is very good news. It can bring in 4 times more light than the previous iPhone 13 sensor thanks to a quad pixel sensor. It's got better macros. There's a new 12 megapixel telephoto, a new 12 megapixel ultra wide, which has 3 times better light capture. The battery is going to be great as well, apparently. It all sounds pretty interesting. The pricing's not bad as well. So the standard iPhone 14 Pro, the 6.1 version, will be $999 and the Pro Max will be $1,099. But what was most interesting was something they have alarmingly called the Dynamic Island. Terrible, terrible name aside, what this is basically they've taken the notch, got rid of it, moved it down slightly and made it a kind of pill shape, which we kind of knew was coming. What we didn't know was coming, and what's completely taken me by surprise, and what I think is very, very smart, is that little pill shape is completely dynamic, can change size, change width, change height, and can display information. So it shows alerts for things like incoming calls, it confirms when your AirPods are connected, and things like Face ID pop up in there, and it even displays background activity. So if you're listening to music and you come out of the music app, the music you're listening to goes into that dynamic island. You can tap it to access controls within it. It's used for map navigation, timers, and developers can tap into it as well. So you can imagine this thing being used for really interesting third-party applications. And I just watched this and thought, no, fair play, Apple. They've been absolutely panned for that notch, which doesn't really matter, but it has been a laughing stock. And clearly they've looked at that and thought, okay, we want to keep that thing up there because we want to have the camera behind it still. But what else can we do with it? Unfortunately, they've given it a name which will still mean it's a laughing stock. But Dynamic Island aside, I can't work out why it's called that, but put that to one side, this is easily the most interesting part of this new iPhone. And that is what I've been looking for. I've reviewed things like the Nothing Phone 1 recently, the Samsung Z Flip 4, we do call it Z in this country, sorry. With the Nothing Phone, it's an interesting, low-cost budget smartphone. The Flip 4 folds in half. That's interesting. The iPhone has been boring. The iPhone 14 Pro is still relatively safe, but they've done something interesting with the screen which adds a new element to it. I love the look of that. I will be going with the iPhone 14 Pro Max. I can't wait to get my hands on one and check it out. As soon as I do, I'll be reviewing it on this channel. And that is it, guys. I've reached the end of my notes. There's lots of other things in here which I will form into some thoughts on my blog over the next few days, so make sure you check that out. More importantly, I'd love to know what you thought about this event. What excited you? What disappointed you? What angered you? What made you think, why have they done that? Get involved in the comments. And while you're here, if you want to see me talk about that Samsung Z Flip 4, keep watching for a link to the full review.